Hi, welcome back to Deep Images. We are continuing our Halloween 2024 coverage. We're winding down our session on demons, devils, and black magic. And we're going into vampires. And we're going to start out today. First, let me tell you who I'm with. I got co-host Justin Cotton. Say hi, Justin. I got Bill
Hello.
Mulligan, and I've got the amazing Francis Chu. And there is a movie that Bill wanted to do that is kind of to some people the Demons, Devils, Black Magic. To some people like Richard Stanley, the director, is the vampire movie. So what the heck? So I'm assuming you're still going for it, Bill.
Richard Stanley, what movie was this?
The movie you're going to cover?
I didn't, oh, I thought I was doing V.
You are.
Oh, Richard Stanley?
Yeah, on the Blu-ray, there's a whole feature with Richard Stanley for 30 minutes talking about it.
Oh, he discusses it. Oh,
But
yeah,
he
yeah. So,
considers it a vampire movie, and he explains his argument why he thinks it's. Now, I know Richard personally. I've spent time hanging out, I've drunk with
well,
him.
he's a cool dude.
He's
Yeah, man,
great.
he's the coolest.
But he's looking at it from a deep folklore. I don't know why he's trying to. In other words, he's going to the Gogol route, like
yeah, like the
like like
Warlock,
like
yeah, right.
The Birdalac. Yeah,
Yeah, I would love to drink. I don't drink much, but I would drink with Richard Stanley because I want to get him liquored up enough that I can like toss in there. So tell me what you really think of Val Kilmer, and then
he's
just
told
sit
me.
back. Oh
Yes,
my God, yeah, what a okay,
one of my most
yeah.
cherished memories is the day before H.P. Lovecraft's birthday. I was in Providence, Rhode Island with my then roommate and Richard Stanley, and we bought each other drinks. We watched a band play while Night of the Living Dead was playing behind them silently because George Romero had just passed. And then
Mm.
the three of us wandered around, getting increasingly drunker and more high, Providence, Rhode Island, and we went into this costume shop that had Cthulhu masks. I mean, they were still open at like 11 p.m.
Oh
Then we
man.
went to the house where that influenced the setting of the wraparound setting of Call of Cthulhu. And there's a
Mm.
little tiny picture of me and Richard there. I mean, you can't really barely make us out, but and we just talked about everything from you know Island of Dr. Moreau to Lovecraft to his girlfriend to everything. And
Yeah.
it was just an amazing night. And then a couple of days later, I went to his panel they had for him. That's why he was there. And that's when he officially announced The Color Out of Space.
Which I loved. I loved.
Yeah, I love
Yeah, I think he's a guy who's gotten a raw deal on a lot of things. I mean,
he's
I
an
don't know all the
amazing person.
details. I don't know all
Yeah.
the details on everything, but it just seems like bad luck has followed him. But he's got an amazing talent.
Have you
Well,
seen
so
Lost Souls, the
oh
documentary?
yeah, oh my,
I
that's what I
thought
was
you
talking about.
had.
Val Kilmer. It's like I wanted to reach through the screen and slap the snot out of him.
Mhm.
It's amazing a good movie ever gets made with all the things that can go wrong. Even if everything goes right, it may not work. And then you end up with just disaster of crazy egos and bad weather and a studio that has no faith in you. It's like, doomed, doomed.
I was
It's
happy to
amazing the
see that
movie's as good as it was.
I was happy to see Fairuza Balk was like firmly in his camp in Richard's
Yeah,
camp.
and I because I've always liked her, and after watching that, I liked her even more. And I'm sorry she didn't get to do more
She's
stuff,
my
but
Dorothy.
she's such a unique looking actress. She has, she's very attractive, but she's attractive in an unusual way. And Hollywood is not always very welcoming for people like that. You know,
Was she in the Oz movie by any chance?
she was in the
Okay.
Return to
She
Oz,
was
and
Dorothy.
she was
She,
quite
Yeah.
wonderful in it.
my generation, she's my Dorothy. Because my mom used to be like, I don't care about the books. Judy, I'll buy them for you, but Judy Garland's my Dorothy. I'm like, Judy Garland is nothing like the character in the books. She's like, but she's my Dorothy. So I love the character in the books, but as far as on film, Fairuza Balk is my Dorothy. That's just the way it
So
is.
let me get to my movie. So I really enjoy demons. I like demons so much I wrote a book about them.
Oh wow.
Because they're cool. Yeah, they're cool characters. You can do so much. You could do vampires and werewolves and everything. But the lore is pretty much written, and if you break it, you have to explain why you're breaking it, or the people will get that's not what werewolves really do. And it's like, come here, smack. There are no werewolves as far as we
Yeah,
know.
that's gatekeeping.
So yeah, come on, knock it off. Most of what we think is true about werewolves was invented for the wolf man. Even a man who's pure at heart. Werewolves were nothing like that in ancient mythology. So shut up. You can do whatever. But demons, the whole point of a demon is that we don't understand them. They are alien to us. They operate by rules that we are not privy to unless they tell us, and they'll probably lie. So even then, we don't know. Demons are cool like that. You can do whatever you want with them. You can make them all powerful. You can make them, the supernatural bitch who just gets, summoned and has to do whatever you want. But you're gonna pay for that in the end. They're just really fun. There's so much variety you can do with them. This movie is VIY. I think I'm pronouncing it right.
The V. Yeah, just
The
the
V.
V. Yeah.
It's based on a story by Nikolai Gogol. I don't know if I'm pronouncing
Yes,
anything
you're
right. It's all
correct.
Russian. Oh, yeah, thank you, because the Russians love to put in,
Oh, of course.
consonants that
I
are silent.
rewatched the Blu-ray the other night just for you, Bill. So.
It's gorgeous. It's so gorgeous.
Oh my
This
God.
movie, I'd seen frames of it, and I was like, wow, that really looks cool. And then I got very much into Mario Bava, and the next time I saw some pictures and everything, I said, wow, that really looks like Mario Bava, which was my way of saying that looks really cool. Beautiful use of color, razor sharp color cinematography, dreamlike, just gorgeous. Um, Finally
Tell
got
us the
to
year it came out. Isn't it?
67, I
Yeah,
believe.
so he was a
Oh, good.
contemporary
Woo.
of Mario Bava.
Yeah, yeah, and but it looks much older than that.
Yeah.
It's got that Hollywood golden age look to it. By 67, we're thinking more, French New Wave, American, low budget, grainy Eastman color. And it's like, no, no. Now this is a Soviet film. I think it was basically probably made in Kiev, but set in Kiev anyway, ancient Kiev. And it's probably the Soviet Union's best horror film because there's no competition. They didn't allow horror films to be made. I don't know how this one got through. I don't know if they thought it cut a little too close to home. I mean, it's like in Spain they would make these movies about vampires where clearly they're talking about Generalissimo Francisco
Yes.
Franco, but
Yes.
because they're vampires, they had plausible deniability. Oh, no, no, no. We're not talking about our beloved great leader. We're talking about a blood-sucking vampire who feeds on the people. And yeah,
It's
yeah.
when Zhang
So
Yimou made Hero, and China
yeah.
was like, "Oh, he finally made a wuxia movie." I'm like, watch it a little more closely. The message of the movie, it's
Yeah,
very subversive.
Bush, you're taking a chance, but for whatever reason, the Soviets were not big on horror films, so they didn't get to make much. I think this one probably slipped through because it is based on, pretty famous writer. Um, and one of the directors, now I really don't know this. There's two directors listed. Neither one of them are familiar to me. But the third one, Alexander Tushko, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is a great director and is probably best known, ironically, for a couple of his films that were used in Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Mm.
These were the dubbed, goofy versions of, but even there, even the guys on MST3K said these are gorgeous films. They use practical effects and
You're
just
talking about
amazing.
Patushko?
Yeah, they
Yes.
did Sword and the Dragon had a different name, and
Yes, I've seen that.
Sadko, The Day the Earth Froze or something.
I have a
They're
copy of
Russian
that, but I
fantasies.
have the real copies of the movies, not the
Right.
mysteries.
Beautiful, beautiful, just
So,
absolutely wonderful fantasies.
so let me
Uh
interrupt you. Pushka co-wrote it. He was the main writer, actually. He did not direct it, but he is the most famous person associated with it.
right. I
He
mean,
is the
they have
director.
him,
Yes.
I think in IMDb they give him an uncredited director thing. And
He made, yeah, sure, sure.
I mean, like I said, the other guys who were credited,
Sadko, yeah,
yeah, they didn't go and do anything else that looked
Sampo.
remotely like this. This looks like yeah, Sampo. This looks like something that Patushko would do. Okay, so the premise is there's a couple of monks or whatever, priests in training, young guys, not really very priestly, very flawed heroes, which is a cool touch. They go out in the town, carousing around. They end up having to stay overnight at an old lady's barn. The guy's sleeping in the barn. She comes in, starts putting the moves on him. He's absolutely gross, but it turns out she doesn't really want to necessarily have sex with him. She hops on his back, takes him on a little ride through the air. She's a witch.
Oh,
And
I
at
gotta
some
see
point,
this.
yeah,
He's
at some
woken her
point,
up.
yeah, and at some point he manages to get the upper hand and beats her senseless, whereupon she turns into a beautiful young woman, and he gets the hell out of Dodge because this has just not been a good night. He gets back to the seminary, and it turns out there's some village that needs him to come and pray over the body of, or pray for this daughter of some guy who's dying. and she was mysteriously beaten up. This guy's such a dim bulb; he doesn't figure out what we, the audience, know almost immediately. He gets there; she's already dead, and then looks at her tomb, and it turns out, oh, it's her. It's the old lady that he beat up and turned into a young woman. Now she's a young woman in the coffin. Uh-oh. Needless to say, he keeps that under his hat because there's a whole bunch of people there. She was apparently the daughter of a wealthy, influential man, and they need to have somebody to pray over her body for 3 nights. And he's going to do it. He doesn't want to do it, but they offer him like 1,000 gold coins and that they will beat him senseless, probably to death, if he doesn't do it. So
He's
between
so terrified, it's funny.
he's got the carrot and the stick, and he wisely, does what he's told. And then it's actually, and this is a bit of a slow burn going through. You're like, what? You might be watching this and thinking, what's wrong with people? This is okay, but nothing special. But then we get to the 3 nights, and it's the pyramid of amazingness, because the first one, she rises from the tomb, but she's blind. He creates a circle around him, and she's trying to get to him, but she can't quite get there. And he manages to last the night. The cock crows, and she starts shaking and goes back into her coffin, and the lid closes, and whew, he made it. But it took a lot out of him. Now he gets himself blindingly drunk, hears some stories about witches and stuff, knows that he's in huge trouble, tries to back out. They're not going to let him back out. So we go for the second night, and more supernatural craziness happens. This set is gorgeous. It's the inside of a church, completely lit by candles. It's got that mysterious blue lighting. I mean, the color is scrumptious.
Oh, it's
the cinematography is gorgeous and everything. And the witch, demon, vampire, whatever you want to call herself, is definitely my type. Beautiful,
she's
pale,
stunning.
dark hair,
She is
absolutely stunning, flawless. Looks like she's made of porcelain. And then he manages somehow to survive that one too. It's not going well for him. And you get to the third night, and we all know how these things work. It's always the third last. This is it. She's going to throw everything but the kitchen sink, and indeed she does. And we just get this glorious, low tech, but absolutely amazing people in costumes, demons with double noses. They should be silly, but they're not. They're throwing every trick they can. This is where I get the Mario Bava influence, because, or at least homage. And for all I know, he never saw a single Mario Bava film, though I find that unlikely, because it's cleverness. The techniques are done in a smart way. These guys, I don't know how much of a budget they had to work on this. It looks awfully well produced. I know Bava had very little to work with and had to substitute cleverness for budget, and so you get things that really work well if you know what you're doing. What these geniuses could do with a small mirror, a knowledge of how lenses work, and some really good lighting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm envious of their talent. And this last one, we have all the demons. She even invokes the ultimate demon, V. And they build this guy up. Now he's a little silly looking for my taste. He's a big guy in a foam rubber suit, comes waddling out with giant eyes and even bigger eyelids. He has to have other people lift his eyelids, and it's not going well for our hero. I don't want to give any of it away, but I urge anyone to see this film, because it's not like anything else out there.
No.
It's very much of its time, but it's timeless. And I think that's one of the things that I really love, why I still love things like Hammer films, especially the classic Hammer films. They don't age. They don't age until, in an effort to get with the times, they started setting things in, Dracula AD 72, which 2 years later in AD 74 looked really dated. Like, oh my God, can you believe these fashions from 2 years ago? Whereas Horror of Dracula and Curse of Frankenstein, those are set in some quaint Victorian time that's so far in the past that I totally accept it. It doesn't look out of date at all, because it's just so far in the past, it might as well be Oz.
I have a weakness for satanic rites, because first of all, he's talking more. Second of all, it is in the modern day, and it was concurrent with the Tomb of Dracula comic book, which was set in the modern day, which you and I read.
That is true, and Tomb of Dracula did a great job.
And he uses like a corporation to like plan biological warfare. Now it's far fetched.
Yeah, it's very far fetched,
but it's interesting. you know.
And the thing is also that's the one where Christopher Lee is clearly having a good time.
Yeah.
And whenever Christopher Lee is having a good time doing Dracula, I have a good time because other times you look at it, it's like you can almost mentally see him thinking, okay, what can I buy with this paycheck? Because they're not giving him anything to do. Depending on who you talk to, either they just weren't able to give him the dialogue he wanted, or he so hated the dialogue he insisted that they just put it out and keep him silent, which
Yeah.
is probably better than some of the stuff they had him say. But yeah,
The scene where oh, go ahead.
No, and I was going to say it's even when you see something like Jess Franco's Dracula, which has all the many of the deficiencies of Jess Franco and a super tiny budget.
Mm-hmm.
Lee is having the time of his life because he's finally getting to actually say dialogue from the novel. And that makes him so happy. So
unfortunately, he has like Herbert Lom to bounce off of, so.
Well, I don't know. Are they ever even in the same scene? It's it's like I say,
I don't think they're in a
Franco
dialogue
joint
scene together, but
no.
Still he's good in it. Yeah, he's good in it.
I mean, I don't want to say I'm not a big fan of Franco's work, but I do admire what he was able to do with such a low budget. But I think again, he's one of those people who unfortunately got the reputation of being able to do stuff on a low budget. That's all he got. That after a certain point, they weren't giving him the stuff that he had early on enough to really work with and produce something.
He was always hustling.
Yeah.
When you've probably read this book, Immortal Tales by Pete Toombs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now that one, he talks about how, Franco was really into jazz and he couldn't stop shooting movies. He was like literally addicted to shooting movies. So when he had any money, he would shoot film and then try to make use of it. How he's hustling people for money, going around Europe. I mean, when he had money, instead of like buying a house and trying to survive, he's like, I'm going to fly to Turkey and get some shots. I'm using a movie.
Right.
Oh,
dude. It kind of reminds me of the American uber low budget director Ray Dennis Steckler.
Oh yeah,
who both these guys loved films. The danger is if you love stuff so much, you can love it to the detriment of your ability to actually create. Yeah. You can't just do that because eventually people don't take you seriously and they won't give you the only thing you'll be able to do are these essentially home movies. You wonder what either one of those guys could have done if they'd been given a little more respect, a little bit of a chance. Well, there comes a point where.
Go ahead. I was just going to say.
No, I was just going to say. Go ahead.
Well, Steckler did do a movie to me that looks incredibly well made. Is Wild Guitar, and it's very well written too.
That's one of his early ones, and that's the thing.
It's different than all his other movies.
Yeah, there comes a point where not only are you not going to be given budget to work with to show what you really can do, but there comes a point where I think you start relying on shortcuts, and that becomes your thing.
Yeah.
That even if someone had walked up and said, Ray Dennis Steckler, I love your stuff, here's $1 million, he wouldn't have made $1 million movie. He would have made, $1,000 movies. Right. Because that's his comfort. That's where he's comfortable now.
Well, that's where people like Richard Stanley that we were talking about are different. He's only made a very few movies, but basically he does, me and Chuck have this little joke with the channel. He basically keeps his ammunition dry. He doesn't like just go, I've got to film something and just to film something. He like bides his time, and he waits until he actually has the backing to do what he wants to do, and have it.
But it's heartbreaking how many creators don't get to do these dream projects when especially after someone passes, you go back and look at their history, how many announced films were made. For every 5 that were announced, 1 gets made. Now, if it's somebody famous who will eventually make a movie like Guillermo del Toro, no harm, no foul. He still produces movies on a regular basis. But you see some, Tobe Hooper, George Romero, where there's these huge gaps. And you're like, what was he doing for these 7 years?
Completely.
He was hustling. He was trying to make something. And Romero would just refuse to do anything. Hooper, I guess, just took what came.
He was a hack, in my opinion. Not to knock his early work.
No, and I don't knock that because if there were a market for like pulp paperbacks out there, I'd be hacking one out a week. I'd be more than happy to
like the old days.
I wish I were living in the days when you would go into the drugstore and there was that rack of paperbacks with lurid
Mass market.
titles,
Oh, I
and
remember those things.
they were great, and the super crazy looking posters, and the
Oh, the art was
premises
always
were
great on the covers.
Yeah, I
absolutely
like those gothic
insane.
romances.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those
Mm.
two. And
Everything was
there's
painted then. I mean, now everything is like
yeah.
photographed and then
Well,
proceeds
now
through
it's AI.
CGI.
Now
Uh,
it's AI.
Mm.
but it's, yeah, AI is, yeah. But it's like back then, like it could be the most low grade, low brow kind of thing, and they would hire somebody who was like an amazing illustrator, that never became
Yeah.
famous, until like now, like 60 years later, there's a book about him that sold at
Yeah.
the comic book convention or something.
They're killing the publishing market. Every time I go on Facebook, it's like they keep advertising these new AI programs that you just type in the
Ugh.
premise and it will write the novel for you, give you a
Well,
cover and some blurbs, probably from other robots. And hey, guess what? You made a book.
You
I
know what I do about
guess.
AI? You know what I do when I see anything related to AI, or what you're describing, all those ads they try to push down my throat? I ignore it. To me, it's not in my world. I won't support it. I won't acknowledge it. I have no interest in it. No.
But
I'm not. There
even
are
if,
people who are
yeah,
activists against it. I agree
yeah.
with them. I just don't feel like I don't think it even deserves that much energy. It is going to take over.
But it is going to drive out a lot of good. I mean,
Yes, it is. I
I'm
don't
glad
know.
I'm not a romance novel fan because I don't see much future for romance novels. It was already getting to the point where just the human writers were pouring out way more material than there was time to edit and do carefully. But at least there was a human behind it. But now, yeah, it's so easy to formulaic things. A Doc Savage book or something. I'd love to write a Doc Savage book, but frankly,
Mhm.
they're so formulaic that the AI could probably do about as good a job as I could.
I'm not going to
Unless you,
knock you, Bill. So
They're going to put
well,
people out of work.
what'd
they
you say?
are going to put people out of work.
Yeah, they
Yes,
are. They're doing. Yeah,
yeah.
Scriptwriters. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Isn't it ironic? The idea, the dream that science fiction had was that artificial intelligence, computers, and robots were going to come along. They were going to do the drudgery jobs that nobody wants to do, leaving us free to pursue arts. And what they're
That's what
doing
Oscar
is,
Wilde talked about
yeah, they're
in the
actually
the,
doing
the
the
was it Soul of
arts.
Man under socialism.
Yeah, yeah, but instead they're doing the arts, and we're stuck with the drudgery jobs that it's not worth building a robot to do, or basically taking care of the robots. The future of
We're the
McDonald's is going to
slaves,
be,
not the robots.
yeah, yeah.
All those
So
movies from our youth, any of us born 60s, 70s, they've all come true. They tried to warn us, but
I'm
nobody
still
listened.
going to write. I'm playing the long game. I don't
Oh, me
expect to
too.
become famous until long after I'm dead. And as they're sifting through the rocks looking
Yep.
for a can of creamed corn from 2029 when the world ended, they come across my book and start performing
Rom,
it, and there you go. And it's like,
highly
hey,
recommend it. Spell the
yeah,
spell the
thank you.
title for us.
Oh, yes. RAUM. You can get it on
And he is the
Amazon.com.
demon.
Mm.
He is a demon. Yes. So don't say his name. And he's a real demon, like historical. So don't say his name anytime more
Did,
than,
did you create him or did you find him?
oh no, I found him. I once I had the idea for the book, I basically went and it's like, okay, I got to give him a name. And I went through the list of demon names,
Oh,
found
okay.
the demonology things. And there's two
Beelzebub.
kinds of there's two kinds of demon names. There's ones that have already been used to death, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to use that. And then there were ones who just sounded stupid,
Mm-hmm.
long, involved, and stupid. It's like, well, that rhymes with a funny word, so no, I'm not going to do that. And I was getting down to the end of the alphabet, and I see Rom, and I'm like, simple, easy to spell, easy to pronounce, no hidden, consonants or anything. And then I research him, and he's a raven demon, which was actually something that was in the book already.
You're
I was like,
channeling Bill.
it was meant to be.
I
And
know it
then
is.
I'm like, well, this is kind of spooky, actually. But
It
okay,
is
fine.
spooky.
It's how it works, man. I've been telling you. I've been telling you.
That's possible. Or alternate possibility. I have stumbled across this in the past, and it is wedged somewhere in the Rolodex of my brain, and it was not an
When
accident
your
that
mind hits a certain level of creativity, you're doing, and I don't mean it by any stereotypical way or any negative connotation. You're doing magic. You're manifesting something that was not there. that may in fact exist somewhere else that we know nothing
Yeah,
about, or it may exist only in the recesses of your brain, but you're the vessel to put it out into the world, and you decide how to put it out into the world. And sometimes even that gets to be like William Burroughs said, I'm never going to be lonely because my characters are always in my head talking to me, and I'm exactly the same way. Every day,
yeah.
one of
Oh
them
yeah.
tells me something they're going to do. Like today, I thought a character I'd made up a few days ago, and I don't even really make up characters anymore. Names come to me, but look at how old I am. I mean, it takes a long. I've always kind of had a talent for it, but it takes years. First, it takes years to like hone it. Then you've honed it, and then you're like, oh no, I've honed it too much. I'm
Mm,
contriving it. So
ouch.
then once you've got the skill to put it out there, then you have to stop contriving it and let it flow. And then you've got something. But for me, that was a long slog.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
proud you got
so
a
it,
novel out before me.
well, thank you. Thank you. Oh, well, let's see. I'm going to keep going, but, um,
You
so
will.
in summary, VIY, which is available on YouTube in a really nice print too. I'll
Could
say
you
one thing about, listen, the Soviet Union was a horrible place, but they did take care of their good art. They kept good copies as opposed to the British that tried to bury the Wicker Man in a pothole somewhere in London. It's a gorgeous copy. It's a lot of fun. It holds up. Really worth watching.
have
I
you
would not
seen
steer you wrong.
have you seen the remake?
I have not, but I'm intrigued to
It's
do
a
it. And
I've seen some of it. It's okay, but it's
yeah,
just a different vibe. You know what I mean?
the
It's
the
not
thing is,
bad or
yeah,
anything.
this film has a charm to it
Yeah,
that I don't think can be replicated now. If
right.
they tried to do it, it wouldn't look right. Some things, and I don't know why. Why do 80s
Well,
films look the way they do? Why do it's like how come we as adults can never draw the way we did as children? We
Yeah, I drew
can't
better when I
capture
was
that,
18 than I do
yeah,
now.
yeah, the innocence that we had and everything. You can fake it, but it's obviously faked. Well, there's a charm to this film that could only have come out at a certain time. I'm actually amazed that it came out in 67. It doesn't look like a 1960s movie. Doesn't look like a
Right.
1950s movie. 40s, 30s maybe. It's like if the silent film geniuses had been given access to color and sound, this is the kind of thing they would have come up with.
Yeah, it's and of course we have to acknowledge that this is a trendy term, but a valid great one. It is folk horror. It's in that
mm,
folk
It
horror
is.
set that Kirillaj
It
mentioned.
almost never gets mentioned in folk horror. In fact,
It's
I've
in
done
that giant
panels.
one. Yeah, they put
Yeah,
it in
I've
there.
done panels in folk horror that I didn't even think to mention this film, but it absolutely fits right in there. And one of the questions I have after watching it again is these town folks who get this guy to go there and everything. This all seems way too coincidental. Way too, why did they pick this guy who
Setting him
happens to
up.
have it's like they're setting him up, although there's nothing in the film that
the
indicates
Wicker Man.
they're aware of that. It's
Yeah,
very much this is the
yeah,
Wicker Man.
yeah.
This is like the Wicker Man, and it's got a lot, and he's essentially a sacrifice.
That is a trope where
Um,
you have the villagers offer up a human to appease some kind of being, and
Mm.
there's
yeah,
all these variations on it, but that's I guess the gist of it, maybe.
And the
and
novel
this
is like from the 1830s. It's a very old
right,
novel from the
yeah,
Russian or
and
Ukrainian
and
author.
apparently some of
Yeah.
the shots in here, some of the ways they set it up were taken almost directly from the original illustrations from an early edition of this
Oh, I
story,
didn't
which
know
I
that.
guess is very familiar to people in Europe, but not us. And again, Mario Bava, my favorite director, did do a version of this, very loosely based, in the Wordle Act from Black Sabbath,
Yeah,
which is wonderful. Boris Karloff, great, gorgeous film, especially the Wordle Act, where it almost looks like every frame is painted. I mean, I just can't say
that
enough
whole
good
movie
things
is
about
just
Bava.
lustrous. Oh
Yeah.
God,
So a double feature of V and Black Sabbath. If there's any theaters
Black
out there,
Sabbath, the mob
smart enough to,
rules.
yeah, yeah, you might get a couple of disappointed Aussie fans there, but if they
Ozzy
stick
Osbourne.
around,
I'm a Dio
yeah,
man, so I'm not worried. I'm a Dio man. But
you won't be disappointed.
what do you there was one or two other things I wanted to ask you. Justin, you
Sure.
mentioned the novel. Have you read it or you've read about it? Or you just encountered it?
Just looking it up while Bill was talking, I just
Cool.
Wikipedia Google search and I saw about the novel, and it's got obviously a plot description as well.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, I saw it was 1835 because I never heard of this
Wow.
before. Yeah,
Yeah, Gogol was around a lot. I tried to read Dead Souls, and I was on the wavelength of those kind of novels when I tried to read it, and for some reason I couldn't penetrate it. I mean, I love Dostoevsky, and I was getting an
yeah.
existentialism,
Crime
and
and
Yeah.
but
Punishment's
I
good.
just could not penetrate Gogol too much. I wanted to go to his
And
horror
Uh,
stuff, but I just never got around to it. You know,
yeah, I do wonder
Anton
when I'm
Chekhov,
reading.
the short
Oh,
stories.
would you say
Anton
short
Chekhov.
stories?
Yeah, Anton Chekhov, the Black Monk, I think it was, is a good Russian sort of,
mhm.
I guess you could say, scary folklore
Hmm.
tradition. You know,
Chekhov was
um,
good. I haven't read
yeah,
much, but
yeah. I
I
think I
always
read
wonder
of his
when I'm
short stories.
reading a translation of a foreign novel, how much of the poetry is coming through. It's when
Yeah,
you're
it's a
writing,
good
you know
question.
this when you're writing, the difference between the right word and the wrong word can make all the difference in the
mm,
world. And you're trying not to use the same word too many times within a few paragraphs. I mean, the
yeah,
English
right, right,
English
all
is
that.
blessed. English is blessed with having stolen so many words from so many other
Yes,
languages
exactly.
that there's 100 ways you can say the color black.
Yeah,
But other older languages where they didn't feel the need to have 100 ways to say black, they just had whatever their word is for black. You're kind of stuck doing that over and over again. So I kind of wonder when I'm reading a translation of an acknowledged master of literature, how much of what I'm reading is what they did and how much has been put in there by the translator.
hmm,
And it's like whoever the many people were who did the King James version of the Bible, there's some pretty poetic souls working on that project. Because
yeah,
when you read older versions, it's like,
a little
okay,
more
this doesn't
plain.
exactly sing, but then you get the one that you're familiar with, and it's like, well, that's some genuine
Shakespearean.
Shakespearean type poetry there.
Well, you know what made me realize get the vibe that I think it's hard to describe and hard to the proverbial lost in translation is I know a good bit of French, and there's a
Mm.
lot of French phrases that have a certain meaning, and then you translate them literally, and they do make sense, but not to Americans because they're not colloquial. So sometimes when I'll watch a French movie, I'll know what they're saying, and then I read the subtitles, and I'm like, the subtitles are fine. They communicate an idea. And if this is true of Italian movies, I don't know much Italian, but I can follow the structure because it's a Romance language. And there's certain turns of phrase, and especially the poetic stuff, where the English is just redundant. I mean, the French
Yeah.
says it without saying. I mean, it's just you know what it means. I can't describe it. I wish I were bilingual because I know bilingual people know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's the closest I get to it is like I'm like, oh, okay, you know what is being communicated. It's not how
Mm.
you would communicate it. Um, do you know what I'm talking about? Do I sound crazy?
No, no, I think French is one of those things. It definitely, when you hear it spoken, it's beautiful. Whether you that also translates in reading it, I don't know,
I
because I
can
can't
read it
speak
pretty good.
French.
I can pronounce it, but I can't compose in it.
But
I'm
you
that
were talking
good.
about the, and I'll stop talking after this.
No.
Um, Classic version of dubbing and how it can make such a difference. One of my favorite movies is Let the Right One In. Definitely one of my favorite vampire movies. The
Mhm.
original Norwegian
You
film.
covered it last Halloween on the show.
Oh, did I? Well,
Yeah.
and I probably mentioned the one that really sticks in my craw, which is there's two different subtitle versions that you can get. One is like the international version, and one is the one for Americans. I guess they dumbed it down, and they did dumb it down because there's a scene where her the weird pedophile that basically, collects blood for her. He screws up. She doesn't get the blood. She's very angry with him. And he looks up at her and says something. So the version we got, he just says sorry. And in the version everyone else got, he says, forgive me. And
Mm.
I'm sure whoever was doing the subtitles is probably, if he's listening to me, is like, what the hell are you whining about? They're exactly the same thing. And I'm like, you should never be allowed to subtitle because if you think that those two things mean the same, and give the same impression of what this character is trying to convey, you're an idiot. There's a world of difference between sorry, which almost sounds insolent,
Mm.
and forgive me, which is from the heart, and
Right.
definitely what I would be saying to a 600-year-old monster that could kill me with a glance. So,
Well, I
yeah.
reviewed yesterday we did a session, me and Rhiannon, and I did the Blood Spattered Bride, and I had seen it a number of times, but I really watched it really closely this week, the Spanish version, and you know, what happens with that movie is what happens with a lot of movies, and this is also what I was kind of trying to get at, but it's a little different. The dubbed version, they simplify it, they colloquialize it, and like so you watch in English, you're like, oh, okay. So then you watch the Spanish, and then you read the subtitles, and it's like, oh, it's so poetic. Are they translating it right? And sure enough, I'll go on and I'll look at the sentences and I'll look at the words. Occasionally, I'll use Google, and yeah, that's like the dub subtitles that are super poetic are a direct literal translation of the Spanish, but the dubbing is like a slightly colloquialized. It's either shortened or it's
Yeah.
longer. Like in Italian movies, they throw like 20 extra syllables in there to fill the fact that Italian words are super long. So it's like, why?
My wife just walked in and she's hearing this conversation. I feel like if I don't mention this, she'll say, "Why didn't you mention this?" I've had more endings of this than Return of the King, but okay. If you ever get the DVD for Mr. Vampire,
Oh, I
okay,
love
one of
that
the
movie. I've never owned
she's
it.
pointing at me and laughing right now because she knows what I'm about to say. Um, and I don't know which. And she was just thinking of that. See, we've been married so long, we think alike. Also, it's good to marry a woman who loves Mr. Vampire.
Oh yeah.
It's one of the first hopping vampire films.
Hmm.
It's in Chinese. It also has an English dub. And it's got like because films that were made at that time, they had a Cantonese subtitles, they had Mandarin subtitles, they had English subtitles, and you had to search around for it. There was a second English subtitles, and we were like, "What's this all about?" So this third set of subtitles, fourth set of subtitles, was apparently done as a gag. It's a joke. It's following the plot, but it would be like if you and I over pizza and beer were just goofing around doing things. So the characters are actually like referencing the fact that they're in a movie. There's one
They did that
thing
to
where
some
it's like,
Chinese movies in that period,
yeah,
Hong Kong
and they're
movies.
just they're having fun. The guy's like, should we take him to the hospital? And the guy's like, we don't have the budget to show that. And like, we said, wait a minute, they're breaking the fourth wall like crazy.
Yeah, I watched
That was
BioZombie.
fun.
I considered doing BioZombie for zombies. I'd never seen it, and I could tell it was supposed to be tongue in cheek and ridiculous.
Mhm.
But I kind of got it. Okay, I've seen enough Hong Kong '80s movies.
Yeah.
I get what they were going for. But the dubbing made it sound like a really obnoxious, just nasty '80s American white jock dudes. And I was just like, I'm gonna have to see this in its language. I can't watch this anymore. I got halfway through and there's some good ideas. I just can't do this. It was just too much. It's
Or
like trying too hard.
they'll make a character sound like Edward G. Robinson, and you're like, I'm like the only person I know. Well, no, that's not true anymore. But most people, if you do an Edward G. Robinson impression to my students, right over their heads. Maybe a couple who saw Bugs Bunny, but frankly, there's not even a lot that watch Bugs Bunny anymore.
Yeah, we've
Small
had the
Hey,
wonder.
Bugs
Henry,
Bunny discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
What
Henry, I've got to go now. It's
you've
been
got to
over an
go?
hour,
Okay.
so yeah, I'm going to go now. But
Oh,
it was great.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So I
Well,
talked right
No,
over it.
no,
no,
don't
I'm
worry about it.
sorry.
You guys are having so much fun.
you're fine.
Oh,
Thank you, Francis.
thank you,
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
Francis.
you, Henry.
You have a
Bye.
great night. Thank
Bye.
you. So thank you for watching Deep Images and this coverage of Halloween 2024. We'll be back soon with more. Justin would like to share something with you that he loves to tell the audience.
Yes, please remember to subscribe, like, and if you feel the need, make a comment, hopefully favorable. And thank you very much for watching.
Y'all have a good night.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.